Galaxy announcing a partnership just today in the journal with Invesco, but to work on various ETFs in crypto. Now, of course, some of this is very dependent on a US Bitcoin ETF actually being approved, which for now has been a big if. But Mike Novogratz, let's just jump into that partnership, what that looks like, and talk to me about maybe thinking that bringing on an Invesco might actually help. I mean, is this about getting a legitimate
think about it?
That side?
Invesco kind of invented the ETF, right? They came out with the QQQ. They have 1,000 salespeople that sell their products, and so unbelievably trained salesmen and lawyers who understand ETFs. And so we're looking at this as a multi-year partnership to come up with lots of products. We're thrilled that Invesco chose us to be their partners. And I'm not sure when Mr. Gensler decides to pull the trigger, but there are going to be equity ETFs with all the different public stocks. There are going to be all kinds of different products that come out, and the SEC will get there.
You sure?
I'm sure. I don't know when, but I'm sure they will get there.
You hear a lot of demand for the ETF, but what some crypto purists would say is, well, all these people want exposure to crypto from some lateral way. Like some people think, well, maybe now I could buy Coinbase stock. That's exposure to crypto, an ETF. And what purists would say is just buy crypto. Why not just buy Bitcoin?
And different people have different levels of comfort all across the spectrum. So obviously, there's a lot of folks out there that are interested in Bitcoin, but may not be quite ready to hold it themselves. So they should have a way to participate. Fiduciaries, we always hold a higher bar, right? Fiduciaries are holding other people's asset. So we monitor that, we scrutinize that, we regulate that. How do they have access for their clients to these assets? So the ETF is going to turn out to be an easy way for people to jump in and get started. All Bitcoiners should be very excited about ETFs being launched. It's making it accessible to the world. Ubiquity is what's going to allow us to get to the next level. It's going to drop down the volatility, increase the ability to have use cases that work for the future.
Who are the institutions? It's almost become a buzzword when we talk about institutional crypto adoption. At the very least, we just know it's not individuals, but who are the clients that are coming to BitGo right now? And I'd also ask what you're hearing the most from them in terms of people who maybe they resisted crypto and now they're ready to get in.
Overall, it's hitting all sectors, frankly, but it's across all sectors. And we can't share all our clients. Some of our clients are pretty well known. We've hit, of course, the crypto companies pretty hard over the early part of that. But the exciting part is, like, in recent years, we're starting to see endowments, pension funds. The reason that's so intriguing is because these are the most conservative guys out there. Their job is wealth preservation, right? And for them in the last year and a half to start taking a look at Bitcoin digital assets tells us something stunning. There's been a lot of talk about corporates. I think that's actually going to be a little harder to come in. Of course, you've got MicroStrategy placing a particular big bet.
Again and again and again.
You got Tesla, which has a particular, I think, ability to kind of draw from the retail sector with a populist type movement. But holding digital assets on your balance sheet for corporations remains pretty tough for a CFO. They're not used to holding commodities on the balance sheet. That's not usually what they do with their treasury. We're going to see it start to grow, but it's going to take a little bit more. Taxes are a big pain in the neck. By the way, we do have a product for that if you are looking for it. We have to pay a lot of attention to our tax component because we take a lot of transactions. It's difficult to manage.
Up until about 3-4 months ago, most people, when they talked about crypto, especially if they weren't, deep crypto nerds, they talked about Bitcoin as a store of value or as a hedge versus the debasement of fiat currency. We all heard the story. And the other stuff, blockchain, they didn't really kind of get it. Another version of Bitcoin. And 3 to 4 months ago, really with the boom of NFTs and the first real use case for Web3 that went viral, people woke up and said, oh God, this is the internet of value transfer. And investors now realize I can't miss Web3. I can't miss the next internet. And so almost every investor I speak to is calling me and trying to get me to explain the difference between Ethereum, Solana, Luna, and all the other level 1 protocols and starting to understand how is this going to work out. So that's interesting from the investor perspective. Of course, that starts with the family offices and the hedge funds before it gets to the real money guys and the endowments. But almost more interestingly, I've gotten 5 calls in the last 8 days from CEOs of major brands who are saying, how do I participate in Web3? Not as an investor to put it on my balance sheet, but how do I participate? How do I take my community that I've built, if I'm a retail brand, if I'm an exercise club, if I'm, you name it, and use this new technology? One of the big state endowment funds told me they were accelerating, one of the biggest pension funds in the country, they were trying to accelerate their adoption, their approval of putting Bitcoin on, because they wanted to send the message to all you guys who are deciding, should I move from New York to Miami or Puerto Rico or Austin or wherever, that they're crypto friendly.
Has it fully arrived? And people talk about NFTs as the doorway, but a lot of people are very skeptical when they look at the NFT space.
What we've seen, though, is enough success stories in NFTs that people woke up to the fact that, hey, I can monetize and own my own IP. And that's not going away. And so, yes, some of the social token experiments will come and go. Some of the prices of NFTs will collapse. Most of them will collapse, right? In the long run, value accrues where people have an emotional tie, and you can get a community that's intense enough about it that it can maintain that intensity. What surprised me is how fast these communities can grow and how long they keep their intensity. I mean, I literally think of GameStop, which isn't a crypto. It might as well be. It is a crypto. Every single equity investor I know a year ago said, I'm not going to short it, or I'm going to short it, but there's no way it lasts. A year later, we're still trading at 190. It's an identity for people. It is a crypto.
Let's talk about the SEC and regulation. Gary Gensler is starting to come out there and say a little bit more. Every time he does media, he talks a little bit more about what he thinks about crypto, and most of what he's saying has not been very promising from the perspective of crypto traders and crypto investors. A lot of people assumed, I think, that Gensler would be very, very pro-crypto just because he once taught a course on blockchain at MIT. What is going to happen with the SEC and regulation, and how do people view it, and what should they do to adhere to regulations?
He's got an issue that, crypto's a new industry, and it doesn't necessarily fall directly in the purview of the SEC or the CFTC. When you can't decide what's a security, if it's not a security, does the SEC even regulate it? And so what he'd like, and he will try really hard for, is to get this Democratic Congress and Democratic Senate to pass legislation that gives him the right to regulate. It's going to be a really, volatile 6 to 12 months in the regulatory sphere. Our community did a terrible job of educating Washington on what our industry was and what's important. It's not like they're starting at zero. A lot of the young people at the agencies are big owners of crypto. I was talking to senators that weekend, and a shockingly low knowledge of what our industry was. And some had staffers that knew. And so even the smart senators, and listen, this is a hard industry, it's not easy concepts. Like, to try to understand what magical internet money is. Our combined company will be close to 500 people with an average salary of over $200,000. Those are all jobs that didn't exist a few years ago. And that got them started. Listen, this is an unbelievably fast-growing industry. The internet, when it was growing at its fastest, had an adoption rate of about 60%, and crypto is over 100%. So we're literally growing 1.5 to 2 times faster than the internet in terms of the adoption of people getting into our space. And so you'd be an idiot as a politician, an idiot, to say, I don't want that around. It certainly is a risk to our markets that we get really bad regulation. It doesn't kill the enterprise, but it certainly could slow down the adoption of crypto. And so it's wildly important that we take this stone cold seriously. An event last week where I think it was OpenSea, there was one of the senior employees at OpenSea got caught front running all the customers. And what was brilliant about that was it was on the blockchain, it got caught, right? It wasn't caught by the SEC.
Yeah, surprise.
What?
Surprise.
Transparency works.
Transparency works. And so the single sentence that gets me, I was like, listen, if all the banks had their balance sheets on chain, we wouldn't have the mortgage crisis in 2007, 2008.
Let's talk a little bit about DeFi. A lot of the crowd here would really like to get down the rabbit hole, and they're in multiple DAOs, and they live on Discord. What is going to happen in this multi-chain future, Mike? I mean, what's going to happen with these different protocols, and especially in terms of friction reduction? You hear a lot about all the money that can be made now staking and lending, but I mean, man, The SEC doesn't like some of that, by the way. But
So-
how do you get more people into this stuff?
So, two things fascinate me. One is, like, speed wins in NFL, right? Like, in football, speed wins. It always wins. And, like, speed kind of wins in the blockchain right now. And so people want things that operate faster and cheaper. A regulator is going to say, I'm not going to allow the financial infrastructure and consumer infrastructure of my country or of the world to be built on something that's not decentralized. And so I think it's a wonky question. Our research guys are doing a report right now on, looking at all the different metrics, and we're going to hopefully put it out soon. But I think it's something that the market will decide and you guys will decide over the next 18 months.